Good evening, and welcome along to our Eurovision special here on NVTV. Since this is the first year in the 64-year history of the Eurovision Song Contest that the final has been cancelled this year, we're going to take a look back at some Eurovision memories with some Eurovision legends who've appeared on the big show over the past couple of years or so. We'll also be joining broadcaster and Eurovision expert Robin Scott live from his home, and he'll be telling us some of his Eurovision memories. But starting things off, we're going to take you back 50 years, and a young lady from Derry who won the Eurovision Song Contest for Ireland with her song All Kinds of Everything. So here's Dana with her memories of winning Eurovision. Remind us about the whole Eurovision journey, because it didn't just start in 1970, it started in 1969 when you put a song in for the Irish Euro song, didn't you?
Well, I was asked to sing a song in the 1969 National Song Contest, and that song came second. But it was so nerve-wracking for me, singing in that National Song Contest. I had done a UTV programme in the north called Tommy James, where he would have
Tea Time with Tommy.
Tea Time with Tommy, and I would sing beside the piano. And I'd done, I think, one Late show. And then suddenly I was on the National Song Contest. I was about to die with nerves. So I retired from show business. I just said, I can't do this for my living. So I retired in the summer of 69. And in the winter of 69, the producer of that programme, a man called Tom McGrath, called me and he said, I found a song for next year's National Song Contest and it would suit you.
Yeah.
Would you sing it? And of course, that was All Kinds of Everything.
Remind us how that went.
Snowdrops and daffodils, butterflies and bees.
I love it.
Yeah.
Remind us of Eurovision that year. Who else were you up against? I think it was Mary Hopkin, wasn't it?
Mary Hopkin sang for England, and I was a huge fan of Mary Hopkin.
Yeah.
She had had a number of chart successes. Of course, the most memorable one, I think, being Those Were the Days.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And I loved her. So I was completely starstruck. And Julio Iglesias sang for Spain.
Wow.
But at that time he was a big star in Spain, but he wasn't known really outside of it. And of course there were other, like Katja Epstein, who sang for Germany, was a huge star in Germany. Yeah. I think she'd represented Germany maybe 3 times. So she was a big star. And the other artists, I got to know a little bit, but I really got friendly with the Dutch, the Netherlands. There were 3 girls singing, whose name escapes me now, but we got really friendly. And I got very friendly with Mary.
Yeah.
And my mum got friendly with her mum, which was lovely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember the moment when they announced that Ireland had won? How did you feel in that moment?
Before they announced that, well, it was just a very simple theatre, and we were all in a back room around a table looking at one television on the wall or on a stand. I think it was on a stand. Then they moved us from that room to the side of the stage where we all stood around another television. But of course, Rob and I wasn't interested in the voting.
Yeah.
I never for one second thought I had a chance of winning.
Right.
And neither did any of the representatives from other countries, because I wasn't interviewed by press or media from any other country.
Right.
Just the Irish ones, because Ireland had never won.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
But we'd had very good entries. We'd done very, very well.
And Muriel Day was great in 69 with Wages of Love. Yeah.
Excellent, another Northern Ireland girl.
Yeah.
So she had done wonderfully. But I never dreamt I'd win. I was looking at the people around me. I was trying to take in all the details so that I would never forget a single detail.
Yeah.
And suddenly, the stage manager grabbed me by the wrist and said, "Come with me, you've won." Well, the last vote wasn't in, but and we'd all missed a very big vote for Ireland. So they knew before the last vote that it couldn't be beaten.
Right, yeah.
But I didn't.
You didn't, yeah.
So I'm pulling against him, saying, no, no, the votes are not in, no, I haven't won. And Mary Hopkins said, you have won, go with them. And I just went in a daze up to the side of the stage, and I must have looked so pale.
Yeah.
He said, can I get you a drink of water? So I said, yes. And I just remember thinking of all the faces of all the people I knew who'd be watching.
Yeah.
And how much it would mean to everybody in Northern Ireland, of course in particular perhaps, but in all of the island, how much it would mean. And suddenly I was walking back on the stage, and I was in shock for about 6 months.
Yeah, and it didn't end there, because when you arrived home again, the reception from the people in Ireland when your plane landed in Dublin, it was amazing, wasn't it?
It was totally amazing. And this year, actually, Aer Lingus brought out a commemorative calendar.
Right.
And they have photographs in there of John F. Kennedy arriving, and Cassius Clay arriving, and Nelson Mandela arriving. And I'm in there too, which I'm very honoured to be. It was an unbelievable sight, because when we left, my mother and my grandmother travelled with me. We were waved off by 2 cleaners and a porter.
Oh, wow.
And I met the 2 cleaners in the ladies' toilet.
Right, yeah.
We were chatting, so I'm going to Eurovision. They said, oh, best of luck.
Yeah.
And the porter outside, who was taking her bag in Western. When I came back, there was about 5,000 people hanging off every possible part of the building.
Oh, wow.
So it was an unbelievable sight.
So that, of course, was Dana with her memories of winning Eurovision back in 1970. Now, still to come, we'll be catching up with Niamh Kavanagh and finding out her memories of winning Eurovision in 1993. And also we'll be chatting to Brian Kennedy about representing Ireland back in 2006. But right now, broadcaster and Eurovision expert Robin Scott joins us on the line. Robin, how are you, sir?
Well, that's a very good question, because I'm sad not just for me but for other people, because this weekend should have been very different.
So you should be in Rotterdam right now, shouldn't you?
Yeah, well, Rotterdam's not probably high on my list of places to visit under any other circumstances, but it would have been nice. In fact, they converted the Ahoy Arena into one of those sort of emergency hospitals, so it's been used for other good purposes.
So this is the first time in many years you haven't been to a Eurovision final. How many years have you been going now?
Well, the first time I went, and I've been there ever since then, is 1995, when you were a child.
Exactly. Now, even though Eurovision has been cancelled this year, there's still some Eurovision celebrations taking place, and we can watch some stuff on TV over the weekend, can't we?
Yeah, the fans were getting a little bit perturbed because the BBC weren't initially going to show this live broadcast. I'm not quite sure exactly what it's going to contain, but it's going to be a look from the Netherlands at the artists in this year's contest and at the contest as a whole. And that's going to be, they are going to show it now, preceded by Graham Norton doing his worst.
So were you a big Wogan fan?
Well, I thought he was great until he got a little bit tired of the contest, and he probably stopped a few years after I would have recommended. And I like Graham Norton. I think he has that sense of quirkiness and humour that it needs.
Now, this year, James Newman, he was representing the UK with a slightly different song. I thought it was a good song choice.
The song was apparently written, he likes to dive into cold water, as I'm sure most of us do. He read a story about a deep sea diver having problems getting back to the surface. And apparently that inspired the song.
What do you think his chances were going to be this year? Because obviously, I mean, the UK are never going to win again, are they?
Well, the BBC admitted that they wanted to get to the left-hand side of the scoreboard. And I personally like the song, but it's like everything else. I mean, what we've seen so far, you get a mixture of all the videos of the hyper quality videos that some countries have produced, and we're trying to compare them with the ones that are just a stage performance. You're never going to know who will have won, though I do have my favourites.
So who is your favourites from this year then?
Well, like many, Iceland is really, really different. It's a well choreographed, group, well-written song. It's one of those ones that makes you want to dance along to. But then you have one from Bulgaria, who to me would have been the winner. That's just, all I can say is simply beautiful. It's not overdone. It's a very simple set. It's almost like a La La Land song for those that appreciate that sort of real music.
So what was it like going to Eurovision every year? Is it just one big continuous party?
No, well, for the first week, I do my radio reports. I would have been doing some stuff from, no doubt, for NVTV. I would have been attending press conferences. It's not quite as open. There is a Euro Club, but I'm a little bit past that. I have to admit, now being 37, it's beyond me.
Now, you've had some dangerous moments over the years as well. I think it was Azerbaijan, wasn't it?
In Azerbaijan, the website that I was working for that year, our site was hacked. And the message put up in place of what should have been there was, if we see any of your team around, we'll kill them.
So we heard from Dana there, 50 years since she won the Eurovision with All Kinds of Everything. What are your memories of the night that Dana won?
My memories of not watching the contest. I was in Austria on a skiing trip, trying feverishly to find a radio station, unsuccessfully, and I didn't see the contest. But the thing I would like to note is, this year, had the contest taken place for the 50th anniversary, she wasn't going to be invited to the event, which I think would have been a travesty.
So Dana won 50 years ago. Johnny Logan, he also won 40 years ago for the first time with his song What's Another Year?
Well, Johnny is historical, maybe a little bit hysterical. He's the only person who's been involved in 3 successful entries. No one's going to beat that. He's a very good songwriter, but I think even he's getting a bit jaded. The contest has moved on almost to a slightly younger set.
Yeah. Now we'll be chatting to Niamh Kavanagh very shortly about winning in 1993 in Mill Street in Cork. What are your memories of that evening?
It was a magnificent song. Her voice is unique, and I mean, to say that it was actually fighting for first place with Better the Devil You Know from Sonia was a sort of an odd thing, because it was class. I mean, Niamh is class anyway.
And of course, Brian Kennedy, he also represented Ireland in the Eurovision. What are your memories of Brian's performance? Well,
Ireland has had a checkered career since they last won. Brian did very, very well for them because he was heavily involved in the song, and he couldn't put a foot wrong. That's where Ireland almost came back into the fold, and since then I've been struggling.
So I have to ask you, do you have an all-time favourite Eurovision song?
It's a difficult one. Almost one of the ones that didn't get to the final this year will be in there, but I go back to 1987. It was a song sung by a duo, and not naturally, but they came together, called Umberto Tozzi and Raf, and it was called Genti di Mare. So you'll find it on YouTube.
I'm definitely going to check that one out. Now, 1988, I think it was, Celine Dion, she also did Eurovision, didn't she?
She's never sung the song since.
I'm not surprised.
I mean, well, mind you, Lulu only recently sang her song. Sandy Shaw didn't like her song, but to me it was a beautiful song in French for Switzerland. And well, some people just want to move on, and I think it's sad, because there's nothing wrong with the contest. Take it in the right spirit.
So on Saturday night, Robin, how are you going to be celebrating Eurovision at home?
Right, I'll have a handkerchief, I might have a gin, and I'll just be watching. It's going to be so unusual, because to say I've never done this, not since I can remember. I'll be watching the 2 shows, the Graham Norton and the European one, and I shall quietly go off to bed and cry.
So Robin, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
No problem, Robin.
Right, another Eurovision legend now. We're going to take you back to the year 1993, and Niamh Kavanagh won the Eurovision for Ireland in Mill Street in Cork with her song In Your Eyes. And here's Niamh telling us all about her memories of winning Eurovision. Because I remember your big night, 1993,
Yeah.
Mill Street in Cork. Linda Martin had won the year before.
That's right.
With Why Me. Then you came along, and I remember watching it that night, and everybody just knew that Ireland were going to do it for a second year. Did you know you were going to
No,
win?
I didn't. I didn't know. My main pressure on the night was to sing well, you know, and I knew I couldn't lose then. Not necessarily win the competition, but because we'd won the year before, there was no pressure on me to win as such. Because back in those days, before the Celtic Tiger started really roaring, you know, it wasn't a normal thing that we would have won. I mean, it was exceptional that Linda had won the year before, and we were so excited by that. And then the next thing, there we are. In Mill Street. Oh, what a time we had in Mill Street. Like, it was just like living in Eurovision land.
It was such a big venue as well, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, well it was, but actually, funnily enough, by today's standards, it was a very small venue.
Right.
Because only 3,000 or 4,000 people could watch it. Whereas nowadays, like I went back in 2010 to Oslo and there were 20,000 people in the audience. So
wow.
It's very different. It was a show jumping arena. It was hilarious. And of course, the whole back area of the show jumping arena was all the green room area and stuff like that. So, you know, it wasn't, the arena itself was huge, but they could only use half of it for the actual audience. So there was murder over tickets and everything. It was great.
So I remember your intro. Terry Wogan was talking about working in the bank, because obviously he worked in a bank as well back then.
Right, yeah.
And that's what you were doing by day.
Yes, I kept my good job, even though I'd done the commitments. My mother was very keen that I would keep my good job up during the day, Robin, just in case, because there's nothing worse than, you know, this risky business of music. I mean, back in those days, it wasn't considered a real job to be a singer. Not unless you were Maria Callas, but
yeah.
you know. So as long as I had my good job in the bank, that was okay.
Tell us about the song "In Your Eyes." Now, I believe the original demo of that song was recorded by Idina Menzel.
That's correct. I mean, the most amazing thing, Robin, I only found that out this year, and it's 25 years later. It was like a gift. I was doing a thing last year with Paul Harrington, who won the year after me, and he told me that Jimmy Walsh, who was the writer of the song, he lived in New York, right? Jimmy lived in New York, and he played drums and did all this stuff, and he was always writing songs, and he got this local girl to sing, this young local girl to sing the demo, and it was a great demo of a song, and it turns out it was Idina Menzel, like, you know, hello.
We got to find that demo.
I am so finding that demo. That's going on eBay tomorrow, I tell you. I'm making a few bob.
So what's your memories of Eurovision night? Was it all a blur?
I've wonderful memories of it, actually, funnily enough. I was very calm most of the night, you know, except the last few votes. The last few votes was a bit manic, but I remember just before I went on stage, the way you worked, you know, you kind of came around to the side of the stage, and there was all the public up here, sitting up here, and so basically they were all up there and passing down notes for me to sign, because they could. I was right there.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I was chittering away, and then I think Sweden were on before me, so I was watching them dancing to Eloise was the name of the song. I remember, because you always know the song that's on before you.
Yes, yeah.
And I was dancing away to that, and then the postcard comes up, and the place went mental.
Yeah.
So I went on and I did the song, and I was very relaxed, and everybody was remarking on how amazingly poised I was and so elegant and so in control of everything. And then as the song finished, rapturous applause, relief for me, because I'd actually hit the notes that I was worried about, walked off the side of the stage and fell in a light box. You don't see that, obviously, but
right,
you know,
yeah.
that's, you know, because I wasn't quite watching where I was going, you know, so all the poise was out the door then. But, you know, the whole night felt like that. It was just really dreamlike, and so I was just pleased I'd achieved what I meant to do, which was basically to sing well. And I was chuffed, you know, it was such a great night. And then we got to the voting, and they were giving us champagne and everything. I wasn't really drinking it, of course. And but my backing singers clearly were. If you watch the remake, you see there's all sorts of choreography going on in the background that I didn't know about. But and then we did the voting, and the voting was exciting. It was kind of calm in the middle because we were doing well, but not necessarily in the contention. And then, of course, came probably one of the most exciting votes ever, because it was down to the very last 12.
Yeah.
Myself and the UK.
Which was Sonia that year, wasn't it?
Sonia, bless her. Yes, another redhead. Yes, two of us there.
So was there rivalry backstage?
Not really,
No?
you know, I mean, to be fair, you know, I don't know if you've ever really gone to Eurovision, Robin, but all the delegates, we spend a lot of time in the same space together, and on the run up to it, you do, you know, events and stuff, and you meet everybody, and the next thing you know, you're dancing in a Greek style, you know, singing Opa, or whatever it is you're doing, you know, and you get to know your fellow performers really well, and so there's a kind of a camaraderie, you're all in there to do the same thing. Now, funnily enough, UK didn't really mix so much that year, but I think there was a lot for Sonia to do on that. that, you know.
She was being looked after by Simon Cowell at the time, wasn't she?
The lovely Simon Cowell, yeah, Simon. But this before he was Simon Cowell. Yes, Simon was with her, and he was with Arista Records, you know, BMG umbrella. Anyway, they were there, and we were down to the last 12, and really at that point I didn't care who won. It was, you know, because quite frankly it was very stressful. And then we won, which was phenomenal, and I didn't know whether I had half my costume still on by the time people were finished dragging out of me, and my makeup or anything. I just had to go back out on stage. They don't tell you what to do. Walked the wrong way, went to the orchestra, completely missed the award given, sang the song at the end with my dancing backing singers behind me to Ole Ole. The crowd were loving it, you know, and it was an amazing experience, you know. And weirdly, when I went back in 2010, even though we didn't win, it felt the same, because your job is still the same.
Yes,
in those 3 minutes, is to sing the song the best you can and to really own those 3 minutes. And I'm as proud of the second one as I am the first, because even though I say to people all the time, I've been to 2 Eurovisions, I've won one, I didn't win the other, but to me they're the same.
Yes,
just longer the second time.
Now, staying with Ireland in the Eurovision, let's take you back to the year 2006. Brian Kennedy was representing Ireland with his song, Every Song is a Cry for Love. So here's Brian with his memories of doing Eurovision.
Because, and in fact, I just did a video yesterday for a crowd of people called Euro Drag, and they're a drag queen Eurovision bunch of people who are obsessed with Eurovision. And because my song was the 1000th song in the competition ever in its history, it has that little moment, and it was a top 10 in the final and all of that. So the repercussions of Eurovision are still here today. Honestly, it was such a camp moment. It was just a moment that I just thought, well, look, why not? You know, I've made all these other records, I've been doing all these other things. Why not? Because it's very rare that you get to represent your country at anything, because the moment you do Eurovision, you stop being Brian Kennedy. I stopped being Brian Kennedy, and I was suddenly Ireland. Hello, Ireland, come on in. Oh, here's Ireland, everybody would say. So yeah, I look back with great fondness. You know, it was 14 years ago.
Wow, and what's it like over there when you go to the final? Is it just one big, massive, crazy party?
Yeah, well, I had to, not only that, it was kind of times 2, because I had to do the semi-final first to get out of the semi-final, then into the final. It's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of rehearsal. Everything is filmed constantly, so you're aware that you're being filmed the whole time. You have to go out to every single party that you get invited to drum up, you know, press interest for what you're doing. And so, yeah, it was, by the time I got back on the plane to come home, I was exhausted. So I can understand how it takes its toll with some people. Like, you rehearse like you've never rehearsed for anything in your life for a 3-minute song. Yeah. And as you know, the wonderful Una Healy was one of my backing singers. Healy from the Saturdays, and now a solo artist. If you look at the footage, she was I was very lucky to have her, one of my backing singers on that whole trip. Amazing.
And finally, for now, on our Eurovision special, we're going to take you back to the year 1969, and Muriel Day became the first female to represent Ireland in the Eurovision Song Contest with her song, Wages of Love. So here's Muriel talking about her memories of Eurovision from 1969.
Yeah. And wasn't it Butch Moore who kind of discovered you and said, do Eurovision?
Yep. We were in Cork, Dave and myself, because Dave's band had disbanded, and we had a 4-piece. Mm-hmm. And we were working in Cork that night, and Butch Moore, with his not then wife, but Maeve Mulvena, her name was, before she married Butch, they were flying out to the United States. But there was a storm, mm-hmm. and they booked into the hotel because their flights were all cancelled. And Butch came over to me and he said, why haven't you done the Eurovision? Yeah. And I said, well, nobody's asked me. And he said, if I arrange for you to go up for an audition, would you go up to Dublin? And I said, yeah. That was on a Monday. And on the Wednesday, I went up to Dublin and sang in front of a panel of people, 12 people, with Mr. Noel Keelahan, who was the orchestra, you know, he was the maestro. Mm-hmm. He played the piano. And I sang Harper Valley PTA, and You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, with a piano only, no microphone. Yeah. And on Friday, I got a letter to say, you've been selected to do the preamble one, you know.
Brilliant. So, of course, before Eurovision, you have to go through the process of the Euro song.
That's right.
And when you look at the names who were in it that year, Dickie Rock was in it that year. Dana did her first appearance in it that year. Butch Moore was in it himself, wasn't he?
Butch Moore.
And you ended up winning the Eurosong.
Yeah. I'll never know why.
Beating all those people. Yeah.
It got 32 votes out of about 60, the wee song that I did. And Mr. Green, the guy who wrote it, he was like jumping up. He was jumping 10 feet in the air, you know. And it was wonderful. It was. I really, honest to God, did not think it would stand a chance. And you know what woke me up the next morning after all the celebrations and stuff were over? I was lying in bed, and we were on the ground floor of this hotel. And what woke me up was a man delivering milk, the milkman, and he was whistling it. He was whistling it.
Yeah.
And it was. Oh, that was a good wake-up call.
You see, the thing about Wages of Love, it was so right, I think, for that time.
For its time.
For its time. It was 1969, and it was kind of the sound of 1969, I think, wasn't it? That's why it was so successful.
Yeah, so it was danceable.
Yeah,
danceable as well, you know.
And of course, remember watching you perform on Eurovision, and you were dancing around all over the place.
Don't talk to me. If you had heard what my mother said about it.
And I always remember the legs. And they're still great today.
Thank you so much, because let me tell you, my mother...
It was a very short dress, you
Yes,
know.
well, I had the most marvellous dressmaker.
Yeah.
And she made every stitch that I wore. And I had some beautiful stuff. She made me an Irish bonine. I don't know what you know. Irish bonine is like a white tweed, almost an off-white tweed. She made me a coat, a skirt, and the hood had a red fox fake.
Yes. Yeah.
Red fox the whole way down to the hemline. When I was going to Spain, she made all my outfits, including the green one. And I didn't get the dress until the day before I was leaving. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I had no idea.
Yeah.
She just had my measurements, and I thought, I have no idea. So RTE had given me a dress.
Yeah.
And it was like a pale white with blue running through it, and it was down to there. And I politely took it and said, thank you.
Yeah.
And didn't pack it.
Of course, yes, yeah. So of course, not only were you the first female to represent Ireland, but think about 1969, you're actually very controversial, because here you are from Northern Ireland, representing Ireland in the year that started our troubles here.
It was actually it was a trying time after I got back, because in the South I was treated with the greatest love and respect, and it was wonderful. I mean, I told the people in Cork, whenever we had been doing that show before, prior to the Eurovision, I said, the first place I'm going to come back, win, lose or draw, will be here in Cork.
Yeah.
And when we got to Cork, I swear to God on this, they were lined up 2 to 3 miles outside the city.
Yeah.
And I got in, and I couldn't get to the stage, and the Garda passed me over their heads. That's the truth. And the girls were pulling. I was wearing the dress that I wore on the original one at the, you know, the pre-one. Was like a raspberry colour with all sorts of beads. And the girls were pulling the beads. When I got to the stage, I had hardly any beads on the dress. And I didn't even win.
No,
you know,
exactly. Yes, yeah.
It was amazing.
What's your memories of being in Spain for the final?
I loved it because it was live, first of all, and secondly, no backing tracks. There was a 66-piece orchestra there.
Wow.
And Mr. Noel Keelan, who was very revered in the south of Ireland, he conducted it. And there were 3 girl singers, the backup singers, the Lindsays. And to sing live in a theatre that had about 6,000 people in it was amazing.
So you didn't win, but it did give you a #1 record.
It did.
And you kept Marvin Gaye off the #1 spot.
Don't, please, it's embarrassing.
There's Marvin Gaye, I heard it through the grapevine, and there's Muriel Day, Wages of Love, and you're #1.
Yes, and if you were to go to Marvin, well, God bless him, he's dead now, but if you'd gone to Marvin Gaye back then and said, you're second to Muriel Day, I'd say, who? Who?
But it happened.
It did happen. It's very embarrassing. It just shows you the Irish market at the time.
Exactly. Now, just after, of course, Eurovision, didn't Tom Jones's manager then want to sign you up?
Actually, it was in the big social room. We were all having tea, coffee, or a drink, and I had just done my song and came back, and he came in, and he said, "I don't like your song, and I don't like the arrangement, but I like you, and I'd like you on my books." And he was handling Tom Jones and Engelbert Humperdinck, and he gave me his card.
Wow.
And I gave it to Dave.
And he ripped it up again. Yeah.
What can I say?
So that's all we have time for on our Eurovision special tonight. Big thank you for watching. And of course, I'll see you back on the big show sometime soon. Bye-bye.